And Dr. Steinberg, we are ready.
Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting for Glenbrook High District 225. I'm sorry you have space here. You don't have space there, but it is what it is. This is a special evening, so let's start a meeting with Madam Secretary. Can you take a roll call?
Mr. Downing, Mr. Glowacki,
Present.
Mrs. Hope,
Here.
Ms. Mullenbeck, Mr. O'Hara,
Here.
Mr. Schein, Dr. Steinberg,
Here.
4 members present.
Great, thank you. Board and Superintendent reports, Mr. Gravel, Dr. Gravel.
First, I'm sorry, Dr. Steinberg, we have the approval of the agenda.
Yes, that would be better if I follow. I feel intimidated with so many sixes. Yeah. We go with the approval of the agenda and then take the motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, now it's your turn.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. For our friends who are at home who cannot see the room right now, we are officially, I think, at capacity. Today, we are so fortunate to welcome students from Glenbrook North and Glenbrook South who have achieved a monumental accomplishment of earning a 36 on their ACT. To talk more about this, I'm going to first ask Ms. Salonikis, would you mind just flipping the camera to the podium so everyone at home can see our friends here? And Dr. Georges and Mrs. Hughes, if you would mind introducing our students here.
Sure. Good evening. Good evening. So as Dr. Gravel said, we are here for such an extraordinary evening to celebrate the remarkable achievement of all of these Spartans and Titans who've earned this perfect 36 on their composite score for the ACT. This level of achievement is only obtained by less than 1% of students nationwide. And look how many District 225 students have accomplished this. And with more, I have Ms. Hughes.
Yes, so this accomplishment not only highlights individual dedication and intellect, but it also reflects the support of teachers, families, and peers who have helped along the way. We are very, very proud of our Spartans and Titans who've earned this distinction that reflects exceptional ability, determination, and perseverance. And so we're going to honor each student by saying their name. And when I say your name, if you would just wave, we're going to hold applause until the end, and it's going to go north. We'll say all the north names first, and then Dr. Georges will say all the south names. Then we'll have a rousing, big applause, and we're going to take a big group picture in the middle. So it's going to be very exciting. All right, so from Glenbrook North, we have Mason Cho, Allison Chung, Matthew Chuncanelli, Aiden Dye, who is absent, Ethan Fink, who is absent, Jaden Han, Stafford Klein, Stanley Klein, Jaden Lee, Liana Malishkevich, Sushant Medikandla, who's absent, Lauren Rachelson, who's out. Oh, you are? I'm so sorry. Oh, you got here. Okay, I'm so glad. I'm so sorry. Okay, so Sushant's here. And Lauren Rachelson, who's absent. Benjamin Sabin, who's absent. Nate Smolwitz, who's here. Andrew Yim and Hanning Zhu.
And from Glenbrook South, we are just going to mention our first names here. We had some conversations coming into this room that's probably the safest bet. So we have Sean and Harrison, Ian, Ohan and Vahan, Nathaniel, Kamran, David, Jaden, Sanjana is not with us this evening, Soren, Roshan, Jimmy, and Miles. Congratulations. And at this point, if we could give them a big round of applause. So students, if you could do us a favor, we'd like to take one large picture here in the middle of the horseshoe. So why don't you come on in and stand in the center and do us a favor? Tall in the back, shorter like me in the front. They're all tall. Come on up, friends. Come around. We all got to come through this direction. I'm with you.
Wait, 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 wait.
Hold on.
Are we fitting? All right, ready? Let me get out of the way.
All right, let's give everyone a round of applause. At this point, for any of our families that desire not to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you are welcome to leave. Thank you so much for being here.
You're gonna miss all the exciting stuff.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Nice work. Nice work, guys.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
All righty, and as our friends are still heading on out, we'll go ahead and get started with the second part of the superintendent's report. As we begin this evening, I just want to take an opportunity and celebrate the amazing accomplishments of our communications department. Over the past few months here, we've really been digging into our climate and culture feedback and information from the different surveys that we offer each spring to our staff and our students. And one of the areas that we identified we had room for growth is respect to our two therapeutic day schools, Glenbrook Off Campus and Glenbrook Transition Services, our newest facility located in Northbrook for our students aged 18 to 22. The feedback that we heard was that while they are North and South students at heart, Spartans and Titans, they're also actively working and attending school in a different site. And there was no home for them to be found on the internet. So we worked with our communications team, very grateful for Ms. Salonikis and Mrs. Smith, as well as our Assistant Directors of Special Education, Mrs. Stacy Wolf at Transition Services and Mr. Doug Schiller over at Glenbrook Off Campus to create online homes for them. So as you travel to our website, I encourage you to select the schools menu in the upper right-hand corner and be sure to check out all the beautiful images that we were able to capture of our students and staff at both schools throughout the first 2 weeks of school. And then as we move forward, we'll be adding more and more information that's specific to off-campus and transition services. So very grateful for that and looking forward to continuing to feature our students in different ways. The next area I wanted to talk about was this tool that you've heard me mention a few times called Parent Square. Parent Square is our new communications tool that we officially launched right around the 1st of July. And since that time, we have sent out over 340 posts directly to our families. Some of those posts are specific to freshmen or to students in a particular club or organization. But as part of our rollout process, we've been introducing our staff members to this tool, including our coaches, our teachers, case managers, school counselors, administrators, and so many more. In fact, even our Board of Education is using Parent Square for our communication. And just really excited to see how many families are interacting with those posts that we make. Just to give some very practical examples, just last week, we were fortunate to have our first GBN Parents Association meeting. And Mrs. Hughes, when she sent out the invitation, also used the RSVP feature. It gave us a really good indicator that we were going to have over 50 parents attend the Parent Association meeting. So not only do we know who's coming, we're able to plan for refreshments and make sure, especially as we're conducting a building tour, we know how to navigate that large of a group to make sure everyone can hear the tour that's going on. We also are very fortunate to have used that same feature to determine how many of our students and how many family members we're going to be able to join them for recognition of our perfect ACT 36 scores. So just kind of highlighting some very practical uses of the tool. Since launching the tool, we also have had over 500 parents now engage with a post. So by engagement, we mean it's not that they're just receiving it and perhaps reading it. They're actually utilizing that RSVP feature. They voted in a poll in which we were looking for information about an ideal time to meet for a club organization, or they simply appreciated, hearted, liked, depending on the term you prefer to use, content that's on that post. It's really important that we recognize the use of Parent Square is more than just sending out notifications in the way families prefer to receive them. It's also about increasing engagement. And the best way to increase engagement and to engage in that content is to download the Parent Square app. So far, out of our approximately 7,600 parents and guardians, 2,000 have downloaded the app. For those who might have missed out on the opportunity or didn't realize there was an app, we actually will be sending out a mailing to all of those families later on this week. And I just want to highlight in our mailing, one of the real important features of Parent Square is it allows all of the content to be translated in the language that is preferred by each individual parent and guardian. And so our flyer is written in all of our primary languages. So it's translated multiple ways. When they download the app, then they'll see all of their content in their preferred language as well. And then just as a kind of an added note, we recognize that some parents prefer not to have another app downloaded. And some parents, for whatever reason, don't always like a longer style email to read. And 306 of our parents have chosen to receive all of their messages by text message. So that is just another option. If you prefer not to look at email or not to look at an app, you can also elect to receive all those notifications by text. Sometimes it's a shortened message that's provided. Other times it's a link to the larger message, but it just comes right to you based on your preferences. So very excited about how Parent Square is continuing to grow and looking forward to working with our families to meet them where they are so that we can engage and improve that family and school connection. The last added bonus this evening is a real thank you to Northfield Township Highway Commissioner, thank you, Mike Corman. Mr. Corman had met with the Glenbrook South team as part of his initial effort to improve the connection between the Township Road District and local communities beyond just unincorporated areas. And utilizing the resources he had available to him, he offered to have the Township Road District sponsor the repainting of lines on campuses throughout Glenview, with the goal of expanding that also to Northbrook. It kind of came very quickly, which is why you're hearing about it really for the first time this evening. But just last week, they repainted the striping on all of the very busy portion of Glenbrook South High School. And so we have a few pictures here highlighting that. So just very grateful to the Township Road District, to Mr. Corman for his commitment to schools and focusing on safety of students first and foremost in his responsibilities. And we look forward to partnering him for years to come.
RJ, quick question.
Mhm.
Was Mr. Corman able to assist us with some of the issues we have on Lake? I know it's more the village, but with that blind curves, in terms of you were talking about signage and everything, would he be able to help support our discussions there?
It's a great question. So during our conversation, it was Mr. Wright, myself, and a few other staff members. We identified not only our challenges that we've had on the curve on Westlake, we also talked about the very large amount of traffic that flows in and out of a very truncated area. And we also discussed on land where the reality that Glenbrook off campus is not part of a school zone right now. He has been really helpful in connecting us with other parties. So he won't be directly involved in some of that, but he is helping us make the
I just, yeah,
connections.
figured if it was a joint effort with
Mhm.
multiple voices, the right
Absolutely.
resources might be able to help us in these areas.
Yeah, one other area that we're working on with Dr. Patak in operations right now, and also our grants manager, Mrs. Gialis, is there is a, I believe it's referred to as Safe Route to School grant program
Yeah.
that provides additional funding, not only for municipalities, township governments, and school districts, for striping and for other safety programs, but it also provides abilities to improve the number of students walking and traversing with their bikes by addressing some significant safety hazards. So we are pursuing that as another opportunity, not only as a school district alone, but also with our governmental partners.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't also bring up, I guess, the backside of Glenbrook North as well too, that traffic has increased. And some folks in the community have raised concerns about that issue as well too, with signage and everything as well.
Yeah, so one of the trials that we've been working on, and a true credit to Mrs. Hughes and Mrs. Bonner over at Glenbrook North, is that with the construction on Shermer,
Right, everybody's focused
Um,
on that.
we've seen a lot more commuting happening around Sherman and all throughout that neighborhood. So we have partnered with the Village of Northbrook's Police Department to provide additional police supervised traffic flow, which is allowing the police to roll traffic through without having to stop at a stop sign, since there's an officer present on that portion, as well as closer by Shermer. So we're continuing to evaluate what works best. I think everyone knows that at the current time, traffic is just a challenge, but we are optimistic in the next 2 months it will be much better.
Yeah, no, just appreciate Mr. Corman's assistance in any way he can provide on all fronts. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Dr. Steinberg, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Gravel. Anything else from the schools, from principals? No?
In order
All
to-
right, so now we're gonna move to the next section, which is recognition of community visitors. It's my understanding that we have one visitor signed in. As a reminder, visitors get 2 minutes, and we recommend that visitors state their name and address, so we can answer back in case there are some questions or comments. So we welcome visitors. I believe it's Mr. Seth or Seth.
Sites?
Seth.
Yes, William Seitz. Thank you very much, Doctor, members of the board. So I've spoken on this topic before, and I wanted to update you on the School Resource Officer Program. First of all, just this is all about Glenbrook South High School, so I don't really have any issue about Glenbrook North. And the other thing I wanted to say is I certainly have no issue with doing everything possible to secure your school. The whole issue is securing your school where you control the school and you fund the school, your own security. Last spring, I was involved in legislation on the School Resource Officer Program. And just last month, the governor signed more legislation to make more changes to it, and they're never going to make that program work. So, you know, you have a school resource officer in Glenbrook South High School. You have a very diverse program there. I do think that you need to take a very close look at that program and continuing the program that you've got it set up. For those members of the board that are new, that's a Village of Glenview municipal police officer. He doesn't work for you, he works for them. And you really ought to have, if you have insecurity, you really ought to have security that works for you. The other problem that I see with the whole relationship is you're not paying the entire cost. And if you really think that a municipal police officer is something that you want to have, you ought to pay 100% of the cost, because the Village of Glenview is not the entire Glenbrook South community. You have a very diverse school population there, and not everybody's going to view a police officer, particularly one carrying a firearm, as a positive enforcement. The other thing is, my time is almost up, is the Village of Glenview changed the contract terms in December. So you don't really even have a contract. And I asked the superintendent, Superintendent John, and the new superintendent to look at the contract, because they changed it so that it would auto renew. And so that's for those of you who are lawyers, when you change, that's a counter term on a contract. So I'd ask you to check your lawyers, but take a close look at it. I'm all for securing making everybody safe, but take a very close look at what you're doing. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And because we have so many civic students, I'm going to explain something that we say sometimes at the meetings. The way the meetings are set, we don't respond when somebody comes, but it's not because we don't take seriously what the comments are. It's just that's the way the Open Meetings Act is being set. We take our comments, we take notes. We take also comments from people that email us or make calls to the superintendent, and then we figure out ways to bring these issues either to the agenda or to the information item or to one of our committees. So I know if it's your first time, it feels kind of strange. Somebody says something and nobody says anything about that. It's not that we are dismissing the comments. It's just the way the Open Meetings Act works, and then we follow up down the road. So if down the road you become parents or something, you want to come to a board meeting, be encouraged to come and share your comments, because they are important. It's not just simply somebody just expressing an opinion. All right, that being said, we're going to move into our consent agenda. So I will have to, are there any modifications? No.
There are no modifications.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right,
Mr. Glowacki,
Yes.
Mrs. Hope. Yes. Mr. O'Hara,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg,
yes,
motion carries.
thank you. Next on our meeting, it's our first discussion action agenda item 6.1, review of the district-wide safety and security measures. So, Dr. Gravel?
So as we mentioned last meeting, the Board of Education has been working to develop a list of topics that we wanted to address over the coming months. Some of these topics might be a topic that we would address once every few years, while other topics we're looking to create more of an annual cycle. And this is one of those very important topics. One of the statements that we often will say when we're meeting with students, staff, parents, or community members is that the first priority of all educators is to ensure that our students are safe and secure. And the reality is that there are many different ways that we keep our students safe. Today, we're going to be focusing on the physical security and safety enhancements that we have been implementing over the past several years, some of which are even new for this school year. I always think it's important when we start this conversation to highlight that in order to keep our students, staff, and community secure in our schools, is that we don't go into all of the detail related to our physical security measures, our procedures, or things of that nature. And unfortunately, that's because if we were to share exactly how we'd respond to any incident, it would potentially compromise the safety of students in an unfortunate situation. Today, the information that we're sharing has already been shared with students, with staff, and with parents. We have provided it through our weekly principal newsletters. We've shared it as part of our dean's office presentations, and some have involved direct Board of Education approval. This evening, I'm very excited to welcome Mr. Joel Reyes, our Senior Manager of Safety and Security, who will be supported also by our Associate Principals of Student Support, Ms. Araceli Conchola from Glenbrook South High School, and Ms. Jen Korber from Glenbrook North High School. And together, not only will you hopefully have a great opportunity to learn a little more about our approaches this year, but this will be a participation activity where you will have an opportunity to test what you're about to learn. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Mr. Reyes, it's all you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here. I can tell you that this is very exciting for me in the sense that I take this very seriously. Safety and security of these students are paramount, right? And with the staff as well. So everything I do every day always puts them in mind. How can we keep them safe? How can we keep them secure? How can we make sure that they're protected? How we prepare, how we mitigate, how we respond, how we recover. Everything is really important in how we approach safety and security in our district. So with that said, I can say in the last 7 years that I've been here, and more recently, we've done a lot of things to ensure that our students are safe so they could be successful. As you see with the PowerPoint here, these are the topics that we're going to talk about related to physical safety and security enhancements. Who's got the clicker? There we go. Okay, so first we're going to talk about our lockdowns. Believe it or not, when I first started here, we had a door system that electronically held doors open. The benefit of having somebody like me is I immediately identified that we had no way to lock those doors in a crisis. So one of the first things that we did was I walked around the building and I ensured that we had a method of locking down our door systems in case we had to go into a lockdown. So what you'll see is throughout the building, you'll see these lockdown readers. They're also located in the library. They're located by athletics. They're located in the main office and in the dean's office. And what that does is it allows us in a moment's notice to swipe a card and lock every single door in the building. In fact, we changed the access of every door in the building because some doors we actually have to just reset. Some doors we have to lock. Some doors we have to actually unlock because there might be some doors, like for instance, in the courtyard where we don't want people sitting out there. We want them to be able to get in and get to a safe place. So we methodically go through the buildings and say, okay, this is what we need to do with this door. With this, we were able to set up a system where not only our staff and administrators are notified, but law enforcement is notified. So they'll get notifications from the chief down to the sergeants on the street. So they lets them know that we're in a lockdown if we swipe the card. Okay, video surveillance and monitoring. So in this new day of technology, AI is it. And I can tell you in the past, I've spent literally weeks doing investigations, trying to find things. With the new technology we have now through our Motorola Vigilon system, we can literally take those weeks and make it into an hour. Now, why is that important? What if we have a missing student, which we've had before? It's much easier to find that student if I know the description of that student. So by having some inputs into the system, what used to take hours can now take seconds. And it could be a suspicious person around the building. It could be a missing student. It could be something that was stolen or something that was left that is suspicious in nature. This allows us really to find that quickly and address it quickly. So I love this, and I love this because I always say to our staff, two things that drive every single crisis: information and communication, right? Information, knowing what's going on. It's just like driving to work. You look at Google to see what roads are blocked. That's sharing information. It helps you respond better. What we did was by putting repeaters at each school, now we have cross-district communication. I can be on a radio here at Glenbrook Administration Building and communicate with any district building with a radio. And they have dedicated channels. We have a lot of channels, dedicated channels, specifically for departments. And then we have talk around channels that anyone with that frequency, which is every single radio, can use. So that really improves our ability to respond to any crisis, because we can share information quickly. And on top of that, with our Motorola Ion system, which has a Google platform, we can share it discreetly when dealing with students and trying to provide information to our security team. So instead of announcing a student's name on the radio or a situation, we can send a photo, a name, and that's the only thing that's ever sent. So that really helps us protect our students. Lanyards. I'm a big fan of these. I talk about it all the time. It is very easy for somebody to walk past a security staff member if we don't have these, and these are not the policy. And it allows us to identify somebody who has been vetted. Every single person who has a staff ID has been fingerprinted and background checked. By having this ID, this lanyard and this ID, we know when somebody's walking through the building that they're safe to be there. And the visitor lanyard just as well. Obviously, we can't fingerprint visitors, but what we can do is run them through our system and check their information against every sex offender registry database in the country. Because being within 500 feet of a school as a registered sex offender is a crime. So by doing that and having these individuals walking around with these lanyards, it allows our security team to say, okay, this individual has been vetted, allowed to be here. And when we see someone without one, we immediately address it. I will also say that if we don't replace these on a regular basis, as staff leaves, we don't always get them back. And so when we don't get them back, if we don't get new ones, then anyone can show up with an old ID or lanyard and walk around the building. In addition to this, these get kind of grimy. And they kind of fall apart. They can. So it's always good to have a renewed lanyard to make sure that our people are safe. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass it to our other team members here for the standard response protocol.
Good evening, I'm Araceli, and my friend here, Jen Korber from GBN. But before I start, I'd like to know, because we do have students here, conversations like that we're having right now could evoke feelings and a lot of questions. So I do want to make sure that our students know that if you have any questions or feelings, that you talk to your parents or you talk to a trusted adult tomorrow. Okay, I do want to make sure we share that. So this year, and I'm sorry, who has the clicker? Thank you. Okay, so if you want to go to the next slide. Thank you. Thank you. So this year, our school district, we adopted the I Love You Guys standard response protocol. Last year, we adopted the standard unification method, and to make sure that we were in alignment, we went ahead and adopted the standard response protocol. What does this all mean, and what is the standard response protocol? I Love You Guys. The foundation was founded by the Keys family. After their daughter, Emily Keys, was held hostage and ultimately killed at her high school at Platte Canyon High School in Colorado in 2006. She, along with 5 other girls, were held hostage. And during that time and that event, she texted her parents, "I love you guys." So her kindness and spirit and fierce joy and dignity and grace that followed that tragic event defined the core of the foundation. Next slide. Thank you. These protocols are widely recognized and used nationally to support consistent and clear communication and action during emergency situations. It provides common language for emergency responders response in schools. Our past standard response protocol had 4 actions, and we went from 4 to now 5 clear actions, which are hold, secure, lockdown, evacuate, and shelter. They're designed to improve safety through simple and easy to follow directions. Every action is followed by a directive, and every action has a specific instruction. Thank you. Prior to school starting, the former emergency evacuation response signs that we had all over both of our buildings were replaced with new signs featuring our new protocols. We asked staff to familiarize themselves, to locate the new evacuation maps in their classrooms and in their spaces. At the beginning of during school Glenbrook Days, we reviewed it with our staff and we shared a 7-minute video for that's produced by the foundation. Additionally, we shared all this information with our families in our weekly newsletter, as well as sharing the 7-minute video that's also in English and in Spanish. And students and our staff in both buildings are going to be practicing all of our 5 protocols during our drill day next week. Again, the new protocol improves clarity and reduces this response time for connecting terms with simple actions, enabling that faster response. And again, it just aligns with our local and statewide efforts to adopt a more consistent approach to communicating during an emergency. It will enhance our coordination with our first responders by using that consistent terminology for which fire, police, and medical personnel have been trained. I had the opportunity to go through some of this training with our first responders, and it was just great that we're all now going to be speaking the same language, so that's very comforting. We are going to be updating this annually just to make sure that we are always following best practices. But I'm going to turn it over to my partner, so she's going to lead us in a short activity.
Yeah, so I think one of the major things that we do when we're using the new standard response protocols is you really want to make sure you have situational awareness. So whenever you're in a situation, what do I know? What is my location? What is happening around me? Because your environment is going to dictate your response. So today I'm going to give some scenarios, and Dr. Cummings is going to pass out some popsicle sticks that are the colors of the SRP actions. And I'm going to go through some different scenarios, and you can work with a partner, you can work on your own. And this is something that we did, Dr. Cummings and Mr. Reyes did it with all administration, and then we did it at our schools with our staff, just to get them familiar with the terms, knowing how to apply situational awareness, what they would do in the unfortunate time of an incident. All right. There are no right or wrong answers. It's situational awareness. But I'm just going to do a few different scenarios. So after the scenario, you can hold up 1, 2, 3 popsicle sticks. When we use the SRP, it doesn't have to be just one. Sometimes we use 2 together. Sometimes we'll use 3. It all depends on situational awareness.
And I just want to add one note. One of the tools we provided for all of our staff is the card that I provided to the board at the beginning of the meeting that's now connected right to your lanyard. The card all corresponds to the colors you have on your popsicle sticks. And so we have the hold, secure, lockdown, evacuate, and shelter. Now, Jen, not to put a little wrinkle in here, could you just walk through what those 5 actions are?
Yes. So when we go into it, so a hold is a situation that we would do. Sometimes we think of it as a medical situation where we would hold students in their classrooms. Okay, so if we went on a hold, it would be stay in your classroom with your teacher. If you're in one of the larger areas, you would stay in that larger area, just so we know where our students are at in the building. A secure would mean that we were going to lock the exterior of the building so nobody comes in and nobody goes out. So anyone, like any PE class or anyone that's outside of the building would be directed to come inside to the building. At that time, visitors would not be allowed in the building. It would really be a way to secure the entire building. A lockdown would be a situation where we would either barricade, evade, or defend, right? That would be a situation where there's an incident in the school and we're advising our students to, either barricade in the classroom, maybe evade, maybe evacuate, depending on where they're at. An evacuation would be when there's a situation and we need to leave the building. So think if there's a fire in the building, a chemical spill, maybe something like that where we would leave the building. And then shelter is where you would go to a safe place in the building. So if there's extreme weather or a situation where like a tornado, something like that, where we would shelter in the building in place in a safe area. All right. Does anyone have questions about the 5 before we go through the activity? Remember, there's no right or wrong answers. You don't have to hold them up very high. I'm not going to call you out. It's all gonna be good. Yes, you guys will be practicing during your drill day, so pay attention so you have it. All right, so the first scenario, during block 1, there's a medical emergency in the nurse's office. 911 has been called and is en route. What do you think we would do?
Just one.
Give me a second. The blue and the purple.
Yeah,
Give me a
so.
second. See,
So-
They give us words. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so we would hold. So I think in order for us to be able to get the emergency personnel in the building, to be able to get them out of the building, we would clear areas, we would hold, we would keep students in their classrooms. If it was right before a passing period, we would just hold off. We would tell them, stay in your classroom in lieu of the bells. And then as soon as the emergency professionals had left and it was clear, we would then release the hold. Good work. All right. So next one, there's a tornado warning, and we got information from the National Weather Service that there's a tornado headed towards Glenview and Northbrook. The sirens have gone off. Starting easy. Good, yeah, we would shelter, right? And so we would go into our procedures where we would move away, we would come from the second floor down to the first floor, right? We would move away from any windows, we would go to interior of the building. Pretty simple with the shelter. Okay, I'm gonna go into a more complicated one. All right. So police have notified the SRO that there was an armed robbery at the Jewel. Gunshots were heard, police are on the scene, but they have not yet located the gunman. What do you think the schools would do? Yeah, good. We would secure the building, right? So at that time, we would be on alert. As administrators, we would secure, make sure no one's coming in or out of our building. If anyone was outside, we would bring them in, right? But minutes later, the SRO just received information that the gunman is running on Greenview towards GBN. As he's coming across the building, he sees the suspect is on the GBN baseball fields. What would we do?
Oh.
Ooh, I need to say where you're at. Yeah, so if you're at GBS, knowing what's happening. Yeah, so I think it depends. As they're going towards Glenbrook North, that's right. Glenbrook South they'd be securing their building. We never know what else is happening. And Glenbrook North would go into a lockdown, right? Anytime there's a situation on campus, whether that's inside or outside, we are going to go into a lockdown until we have more information. So at that time, the school would go into a lockdown. And I think it's important to note, we would also be, my guess is the police would also be talking to Maple across the street from GBN, and they would also go into a lockdown at that time. All right, you guys passed. So good job. Yeah.
For each of those scenarios, how quickly and how are parents notified?
Yeah. I think we had a good question though, like how parents would be notified. So that's where I think it's really important in Parent Square. I think we would be sending out alerts as soon as we had them. So if it's happening at GBN, we're going into lockdown, we're making sure, but our district office, GBS, they would be, sending information out, our communications team out through Parent Square to let everyone know of the situation.
That's
So-
kind of a nice segue.
Yeah.
Into, we have, Christine and I have been working on messages that we have in a file for situations that may occur, and we have put them right into Parent Square so that they're ready to go. And all we have to do is change dates and times and some other information. But right now, they're in a place where they can go out. The other nice thing about Parent Square is even if someone has opt out of receiving messages, it will be overridden and they will get it in all the ways that we send it out in text, phone, email. And we try to do that as quickly as possible. I mean, it depends, of course, on how quickly we receive the information, but unfortunately, we've had to do this a couple times over the last several years, and we've been able to get parents information as quickly as possible. The other thing that we do is we number our messages and we also try to give them an update. You will get another update at 1:30 in the afternoon. And then when the last message occurs, we say, this is the last communication that you will be hearing from the district so that people aren't waiting to get additional information when nothing else is coming.
Remember when I said information and communication, right? That drives every crisis, and being able to communicate from one school to the other, or even our partner schools, is essential to ensure that we all keep safe. If they know that they're going into a lockdown at North, having that information to be able to go to secure and hold at South, at off campus, is really important. They keep our staff and our students safe. Wonderful. I will just say that when I recommended that we went to the standard reunification method and the standard response protocol, it was really because of the fine work that was being done at the foundation, I Love You Guys Foundation, and how it's being adopted nationwide by so many different schools. That's super important in the sense that that common language that we need as part of the incident command system, that everybody who shows up knows if we're in a shelter, what we're doing. So law enforcement, fire, it could be anybody that comes, social workers that are part of our group. If they know that process, they know how we're responding. So that's why it's so important. Okay, so I think we're back up one. There we go. So this is something that we started, and I actually have to give credit to our retiree, Lisa Sly, who started this. She said, hey, Joel, we should do a safety and security orientation. And ever since then, it's grown. So it's about a 50-minute orientation where we go over so many things that new employees need. For instance, having lanyards, how to access doors, how to lock down a door, what tailgating is. Does anybody know what tailgating is? And I'm not talking about the Bears game.
Following someone in.
Exactly. So knowing your surroundings, situational awareness, if somebody's following in behind you, that's tailgating. Knowing our emergency procedures, knowing where the evacuation maps are, which is back there. Knowing how our visitor management system works. Another thing is, and it's really important, how to contact both the security team and the SRO team. I also tell them about the benefits of having an SRO. Based on the DOJ, average response time for a police officer not in the building is 3 to 5 minutes. Average response time for a police officer during a crisis in the building is 60 seconds or less. So having that resource is huge in terms of responding to crisis. So something else we started a few years ago, and I don't want to not mention our staff. Our security team does an amazing job. They're everywhere. They're always looking. They're monitoring. Our security leadership, Kristen Wick and Dan Gorski at Glenbrook North and Glenbrook South, respectively, also do an amazing job. We work closely together constantly. And what we've done over the years is we created a training program for them. So during our late arrivals, and we've done this for years, this is what we go through. So there's not a dull moment on a late arrival for security. We do active assailant response, and that's just not talking about it. We get into a classroom. We show what it's like if there's an emergency, if there's a lockdown, how you lock down. We talk about running. We're talking about the proximity of the threat. How do you get out of there? You know, if you're close to the threat, you have to fight. If you're far away, you may have to run. So we talk about all those things. We talk about mass gathering areas. We talk about bomb threats and suspicious packages. You know, what to look for. How do you identify that something that's suspicious? Who do you notify? How do you help search? And where do you search first? The officers do a great job. They'll do a drug recognition, a course for our team where they go over, this is how you can hide a vape. This is some of the ways you can hide other things. We do evacuation chair deployment. So at the top of every stair, we identified, and I give credit to Dan Gorski for this one, we identified that we have chairs and nobody really knew how to use them. So we have on our staff former firefighters who now teach other staff how to deploy these emergency chairs. And it's worked out really well. Medical emergency response, she talked about that a little bit with the hold. Radio protocols, we go over radio protocols, when and when not to talk. Because believe it or not, you can't talk and listen at the same time on a radio. So once you press that button, you got to let it go. Reunification training, we go through the response part of that because there's different tiers to reunification. The tiers, you have the administrative end, how we're setting everything up, but then you have the response part of it where the individuals are actually going to have to staff those lines, take people, enter their information. Everything that's involved is part of reunification. So we do that with our security staff. We do something else I call observe and report. And to be honest, I've been struggling for years what to call this. And I say observe and report ultimately because it's not just observing when something happens. It's observing behavior before it happens. One of the biggest things we can do as a security team is prevention. Identify students in crisis before it becomes a problem. So we train our students through also through our CPI, nonviolent crisis intervention. We train them to identify some of the behaviors that are not typical. Every staff member, we talk about engaging with students to find a baseline. If that student falls off that baseline, now we've identified a student who has changed in some way. And we don't handle it ourselves. We report. So Laura's team at each school, we make sure that they're aware of it, the deans, that they're aware of it, because it's better to get intervention for a student as soon as possible versus just ignoring it. So these are things that your securities team is doing and you may not realize. So we really pay a lot of close attention. And finally, special events operation, because when you're outside with a lot of people, security is a lot different when you're closed in a secure location. So, is that it? Any questions?
Before we take questions, I just want to answer a few questions that I had come from different board members and even some of our administrators. We attempted this evening to provide a little bit of an overview of some of our efforts to keep our facilities secure. At the end of the day, we know as educators, the best way to keep our facilities and our schools secure is to make sure that we are all operating, I think Joel often says, we're all reading the same sheet of music. When we are identifying challenges, we're calling them to the attention of individuals who can address them, such as Mr. Reyes mentioned, if a student or a staff member sees an adult that does not have an identification card on that's authorized, we all have a responsibility to stop them and to make sure that we get someone who can address it. We also have a variety of other activities that happen throughout the day that oftentimes go unnoticed. For instance, we have one of the largest implementations of electronic lock readers and sensors, I would argue, within the state, if not the country. We have electronic lock sensors on our exterior doors, on our interior doors, on closets, everywhere. And one of the challenges that you experience with electronic locks is they can have issues. We have a variety of proactive reporting mechanisms that are in place for us to identify those issues and follow up with them. We've even started to evaluate our buildings and ground staffing and hired an individual who spends about 50% of their time addressing door issues each and every day throughout the weekend into the evening to make sure that the physical envelope of our campus is secure. But as Mr. Reyes mentioned, when you see something, we need to say something, and we need to make sure that there's mechanisms for individuals to report when they see a door that might be damaged, when they might identify a process that has been missed that might need to be reevaluated. And so there's a variety of different reporting mechanisms available to our staff and students. In fact, if you're not aware, to our board members, on the back of your ID card is a phone number that says shift phone for both GBN and GBS. And that's because we know that issues can come up at 5 in the morning, at 11 o'clock p.m. when students are coming back from a trip and throughout the day. And so we wanted to make sure right at the fingertips of our staff is a phone number to contact if there's an issue, so that you're not just sending an email or filling out a ticket or what have you. And we always have staff members that are available to take those calls. So just wanted to offer a little bit of background on some other things that happen behind the scenes that you don't always see. And at this point, I know Ms. Korber, Ms. Canchola, and well as Mr. Reyes, and any of us are happy to take any questions from the board. Dr.
Mr.
Samper.
Kowalski?
First of all, thank you all for all your work and everything. I mean, we're fortunate to, a few years ago, create this position, which was pretty unique, I think, at the time for many districts in a model. And we were even more fortunate to have someone like Joel with his experience and everything to drop on and lead us through coming up with a formal program. So thank you first for all of that to all of you. And the world's changing. That's just the unfortunate, sad truth. Every day we hear some tragic story, unfortunately, somewhere. And we learn from that. And the team is learning from that, using that to adapt, whether it's something physical, something medical, something accidental. We've had that happen at some of the schools. And we learn from those situations. So this is like an exercise for going kind of to the comments you were making earlier for the students in the class. This is like an exercise. If you're prepping for that test or a game, you just don't ever want this game to happen, but it happens. You know, with this weekend, we had a patron who just didn't feel well, but seconds matter. And having the hold in place changes what their outcome was. They fainted. Medical professionals could end up helping out. That was wonderful, but it was due to the training and everything. Anyway, now I'm off my kind of history and so about questions I had for the team. With some recent situations that have happened in our community or surrounding communities where there have been, I know, criminals or alleged criminals, I guess, in the area. That one scenario that was just read about cutting through a school property and everything. What can we do, in your opinion, to enhance our relationship and the communication further with local authorities? Because those are situations where seconds matter. It changes from the person darting left instead of right. And if he goes left or she goes left, it's into a crowd with, unfortunately, people versus out to a field where it's much more controllable, as an example.
Absolutely. So the first part of that is having an SRO in the building, because an SRO has direct communication with the law enforcement partners immediately via the radio. Something else that I did not mention, that law enforcement has access to our radios. They can monitor it. They also have access to our cameras, but anytime they access our cameras, we get alerted. So they can't just randomly watch our cameras. It's only when there's an emergency. But what we can do is exactly what we have been doing. And what do I mean by that? Over the last 3 years, and that was my goal to get this done in 5, took me 7, but we did a functional exercise at Glenbrook North, a functional exercise at Glenbrook South. For those of you who don't know what that is we brought in our law enforcement and our fire partners to do an actual response. And so they go through the building as if there was somebody trying to harm someone else. But then on top of that, this summer, we did a tabletop exercise where we had 24 different organizations present. Anyone that could potentially be a partner in one of these things. So to your point, how do we build those relationships? Exactly what we're doing. Another thing that we did is I partnered with other people, and we started what I refer to as the Northern Illinois Safety and Security Leadership Group. And we meet on a monthly basis during the school year to talk about best practices, to bring in experts. In fact, we had Laura talking about behavioral threat assessment on a panel one time. We bring in partners from the FBI, from IEMA, from Cook County Department of Emergency Management. We bring in anyone we can, and it's building those relationships, not only that gives us access to free training, but also gives us a resource in a crisis.
Now, would you say there's any benefits, the flip side also with the SROs helping local authorities also kind of understand the situation? It seems like, I don't know, schools being large public places becoming target more and more for whether it's a target for something.
Right.
And give them a better understanding about the impact that safety and security has on the schools.
So you're talking about how law enforcement views our security?
How they learn from us. Do you see a
Well,
benefit there as well?
so we encourage them to be present. We encourage them to walk the area. Some of our staff members are former law enforcement partners from this community, which I love because they know the schools, they know the community, they know our students. And so you have an immediate connection there. We have Glenview Fire represented. We have Glenview Police Department represented. We have Northbrook Police Department represented. And we have Glencoe firefighter and police department representative. So we have all these people, and maintaining those relationships is huge.
Wonderful, thank you. This may be more of a question for you, RJ. In terms of, I know we've had some studies in the past from time to time on certain aspects of our safety and security.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's been also based on, I guess, governmental initiatives as well too. Do you foresee that there's going to be a need for any future studies? Because we're pretty good with, I think, our last study in terms of following that as our playbook. But
Yeah.
what's on the horizon?
So we look to do a exterior and interior security assessment, which is performed by an outside provider. Most recently, we used an organization, West 40, out of the DuPage area. We typically bring in a group every 2 to 5 years. It depends. For right now, from a capital project standpoint, we already know our next round of security cameras, exterior doors, other physical enhancements, including the evaluation of additional secured entrances or staged entrances at both north and south. So I would anticipate probably another year or two before we do an assessment, but likely capital projects for both the summer of 2026 and 2027.
May I ask that we also consider a cyber assessment as part of that, given you were referencing the electronic locks? So much of our communication is now digital and everything else, that these threats and everything rely so much on the technology as well too.
Absolutely.
No, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to add one thing, though. There was something mentioned earlier about SROs, where their loyalties are. The good thing about my position is I have almost 29 years of law enforcement experience. So I bring that here, and my loyalties are with the district, right? Which means my loyalties are with the students, making sure that they're safe. So always remember that somebody like me with my background coming into this environment, I am, they talk about silos, I am a different silo. And bringing those together and having my viewpoint, I think, is essential in identifying issues and maintaining that confidentiality on our part to ensure that we're all safe.
Mr. O'Hare.
No, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think I speak for just about everybody in our community when I say I hate that we have to do this. I think that's just put it out there. It's not something that you like to do. But being ready for when the problems happen is how you make sure the problems are less. And so thank you for the update. I guess my question is, you mentioned, I know we had all the departments in last year. You said, is there a plan for how often should we do that? Because the knowledge kind of fades once you do it if you don't continually do it. Is there a plan for that?
So we should always do something. Now we can do it like this, or we can do it like this. So it can be small or it can be large. We always have new employees coming in. So even if we do it, they're going to have to be exposed to it at some point. So to your point, as I like to do something every year, the scale of what we do, it depends. But I think it's important that I could put a button here, and that button I press and it makes everything happen. It's not the question of the button. It's the question of when do I push it? That's the training part of it. I need to know when to push or not to push this button based on what's going on. And that's why we have to continuously train, because we have to build that toolkit, that crisis response toolkit, with everybody from the top all the way to the first line so they know how to respond. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So what you're saying is the key is getting the information up to the right people so that we can react to the issue, whatever's occurring, in a quick and timely manner.
Yeah, so we have communications, right? We have to practice that. We have to practice response. We have to practice that prevention part of it. And then we have to look at the technology that's available that helps us. Technology should always supplement decision making. It should not be the decision maker. And that's what we have to train to.
No, thank you. I guess I just, is there a best practices on the amount of times and stuff we should be training with the police? Like how often should we be interacting and having them in the building? Because if the buildings, you can get lost in Glenbrook North. And if you're a new police officer and you come in, how often is there a best practice on that or?
There isn't really a best practice other than I encourage them to be there. So whether they're walking around during the day, and I know that both principals can attest to this, they'll see officers, they'll even say officers will be walking around today, or coming in after hours. And we've done that when I was on the police department before. We'd come in after hours and we'd do training in the building because it allows the officers to understand the environment, right? Become proficient, but then they have a better idea of the layout of what it looks like. Because Glenbrook South, right? It's kind of piecemealed here and there. Glenbrook North, more boxy, but you still have to walk to understand, you know, where the C wing is on the second floor. And if you never go there, you're not going to be able to get there as quickly as you should. So that's what we encourage.
Ms. O'Hara, just one follow-up. Illinois School Code, as well as a few different other statutes, do have requirements for law enforcement as well as public safety fire departments to be part of different drills. And so there is a level of requirement for them to be in our facilities to see how we respond and then to provide feedback, especially with respect to how our students are doing in different drill formats.
In our drill days. So after we have our drill day, we actually debrief with our law enforcement and our first responders. Each building.
Thank you. Ms. Hope?
Yeah, you mentioned SROs and then the security team. How many SROs do we have?
We have one at each school.
At each school, including off campus?
No, just one at North and one at South.
And then who else is a part of a security team? Like what
So
other
the security
types?
team, so it's myself. At each school, we have an assistant safety and security manager. At South, that's Dan Gorski. At North, that's Kristen Wick. And then at each school, we have 19 security staff members at South when we're full strength. 15 because we added one at North when we're full strength. We have one here for the visitor center, and we have one, 2 at off campus.
Wow. And how,
Well, it's important.
yeah, thank you. How does that compare with other districts that are similar to ours in terms of the different, you know, physical plant measures that we have and the staffing?
It's interesting you ask. I get asked all the time by other school districts, what are you all doing? And I like to be innovative. I like to be ahead of that. I always say security, you know, when you look at a threat, it's like a river. It's going to take the path of least resistance. You have to find that path before we get there. You know, it's not a straight line. So I'm always thinking of what can we do to improve our security. So because of that, for instance, we gave law enforcement access to our school with a fob. Now, we did that with the understanding that if they key in, we get an alarm. It says, hey, law enforcement showed up. We did that 2-3 years before the state mandated it. So the state required, right, the statute changed and said, you have to do this. And we do it. Before they talked about trauma training, we were doing CPI, and we do the trauma portion of it, which qualifies too. So I'm always looking at getting ahead of things that are happening, trying to be on, like you say, in front of best practices and being innovative in a traditional Glenbrook way where we identify problems before they become problems so we can find solutions.
You mentioned like outdoor events and you brought up the sporting event. It's something I hadn't thought about very much, to be honest. Like how do we handle, you know, the homecoming game is this weekend or
Yes.
the homecoming dance is this weekend. Like how do we handle those types of things?
So it starts out with planning, right? When we look at what are our egress points? Are those doors open? Who's responsible for communicating when there's a crisis? How are we responding as teams to that crisis? Who is in command of that crisis? Because if somebody just starts talking, there has to be somebody in charge, right? And then how we respond collectively. It's just like a crisis in a school. If you have something going on, let's say, the gym at either school, not every administrator should respond. Because what happens if there's another crisis somewhere else in the building? You need to have an administrator to respond. So it's not just about getting everybody there. It's communicating how we're responding in advance. What channels are we responding in? Who's responsible for the egress part? Who's communicating? There's so much that gets in that is involved. What channel we're on the radio. So there's so much that's involved in the planning part of it to ensure that if something does happen, we can get them out. Because there's all kinds of things that could happen. Could be weather, could be structural failure. It could be, God forbid, somebody trying to hurt someone, right? It could just be a fight. there could be a lot going on. And remember that all the football games, police presence there, which is important. Basketball games, police presence. We try to have them there when we can.
All right, one last question.
Yeah.
I know, Ms. Control, you mentioned before you guys started talking that this can be a hard topic for people and to seek support. Do we do that, you know, for the drills that we have, and or if there is, you know, if we have to call a shelter or something like that, how do we make sure that the kids who are struggling with even just a drill are getting that support?
So as Laura, Dr. Cummings will tell you, I'm a big proponent of identifying students in advance. So state law actually requires, authorizes people to opt out of those drills if they feel like they can't take part. And I understand that part of it. So we also talk about anytime I do a presentation, that's because I do some pretty gritty presentations. I talk to people, say, if you have issues, you can walk out. I will not take offense to it. I'll get you back when we're done talking about that. And especially when you consider that Highland Park is not that far from us, right? And it's not unlikely to have a staff member or somebody who was close to somebody that was involved. So I'm very cognizant of that. I'm always trying to take that into consideration. In fact, during our exercise, it was up on the board that, you know, we're going to be talking about some things if you need to understand that might be difficult. So walk out if you have to.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of comments and a question. I really appreciate all of you, really, but putting an emphasis that we are dealing with human beings here, and these human beings are teenagers and they're going to school. So you just mentioned it, Ms. Hope made the question, not losing that side in terms of seeing something, saying something, this has an impact on our lives, how does it impact? I wonder, connected to this, how are we working together with our social workers, with our mental health team? Because there are two aspects here. One is see something, say something, that's one thing. But the other thing is like, try to identify when you're not feeling okay. And it's not, I'm not seeing anybody. I'm seeing myself through the mirror or seeing myself through waking up, and I'm not feeling myself. And this has to do with safety as well. And are we doing something on that?
Dr. Cummings, would you mind taking this question?
Yeah, I think coming soon, in October, we are going to be presenting also on like the emotional safety of students and all the things that we do proactively to help students. But within our clinical teams, meaning our psychologists, our social workers, our school counselors, we've done several different trainings. One was called Prepare, which several of our administrators have gone through as well, which helps you identify and prepare for a crisis. So we're really trying to look at the proactive side of those crises, which is why we do training so we're all on the same page with our behavior digital threat assessments, with our health and safety assessments, so that we are looking and trying to identify any issues ahead of time, knowing we have the supports in the building to help students and staff after a situation occurs.
Thank you. The other point is, I think, I think Ms. Korber said it earlier, sometimes you realize somebody is going to an odd time, and it's identifying this. And if you look at literature of most of these tragedies that are happening, most of them are local, but don't happen while we are in school, happen years earlier. So this kind of training behavior. Now, you're training not how to react only right now, but how to react down the road. Once you graduate from here, you go to college, once you come back and leave as part of the neighborhood. How many times we hear about, yeah, that person have withdrawn. I haven't seen him or her coming to the usual places, but people don't react to that, only react to connect. So maybe by talking about these things often, it stays within us as some gymnastic mental exercise that it doesn't stop the minute we graduate from school, because at some point, especially in our community, we're going to come back here. So I think it's not only a service that you are providing to the school, but you're providing a service to the community. A question that I don't know if it's for you or for Dr. Gravel, I'm glad to hear we're using more AI because of the time, like you mentioned, it's making it way faster. I'm assuming, in terms of privacy, especially facial recognition now, and technology needs a lot of resources that sometimes we cannot afford to keep in-house. So I'm assuming our contracts and everything are very strong in terms of keeping privacy, not just of our name and information, but now as physical features and faces. I don't know who has the answer for it.
Yeah, I can take that one. Within even Illinois School Code, biometric and different identification technologies are limited. We started talking about this type of technology with respect to using fingerprints for lunch accounts about 20 years ago. So all of our systems, first and foremost, are compliant with all state and federal regulations and guidelines. We do have policies that address these systems as well. And from a overall storage standpoint, we have without disclosing too much, we have the proper configuration of software and hardware to ensure that it has capacity to function as needed, is backed up, and is secure, both physically and from a potential cyber risk or cyber attack.
Thank you. Last question. We work with our community, right? So not everybody comes to school. Not everybody is a relative of somebody that comes to school. So if somebody in the community has questions, where should those questions be directed?
So if we look at our website and we look at where you might have questions, so many questions would actually flow through our dean's office or associate principals at Glenbrook North or Glenbrook South. Then they would escalate up through Joel. Ultimately, the way the structure is, it might go to Dr. Cummings or it might come to myself. But we typically tend to start at the dean's office, followed through the associate principals at North and South.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I had a follow-up question, shifting back to the emergency crisis response for something physical happening. I think one of my colleagues referenced, the parent notifications and everything, but what do you envision we could do further sounds like we're doing a lot of practice with the staff, with the students. What can we do to do more practice with the parents? Back when I was growing up, you had the emergency every, now and then. This is a test of the national broadcasting emergency. So you knew, okay, I'm going to watch for this and they're going to come back and it's a test. So I know that's the signal I hear if there's a tornado happening and everything. What can we do, in your opinion, to practice with parents and work on?
So what I'd like to see, and that's, I love the question. What I'd like to see is the next step going into what a reunification would look like. So if we did the standard reunification method through the I Love You Guys, which we adopted a few years back, a big component of that is the parents. The parents show up, have to go through a process and pick up their students. We really need to try to educate them to see what would that look like. So even if we took, people that are part of the parents association and get them there to go through this process, maybe bring, some players in terms of students and go through what that would look like in a reunification. So they know what the expectation is, and then they share that with others so everyone knows what the expectation is. They know where to look it up online so they can become more educated about the process. So that's something that I'd like to see down the road that we do.
Any other areas you could? Yeah.
I think part of it also is for parents. I think it'd be great.
Araceli, if you want to come up to the microphone.
I think it's very important for parents to talk to their students at home about in case of an emergency. I think that starts at home, to say if this were to happen, as I think somebody mentioned, unfortunately, it's a part of our daily life now, and we see so much in the news. That's why we shared the video that the foundation, because we wanted our parents to sit down with their children and say, hey, let's watch this video together in case, what would you do? I'm a parent, so I talk to my daughters about, like, hey, if this happens, this is follow, but some other additional information you can use. So I think part of that is having that parents to have the conversation with their students.
Yeah, I tried it with my son. Took me 4 years till my daughter made it through, and then I learned what we do.
Yeah.
So.
So yeah, that sharing of information is a big part of it. Again, it's we can teach you something, but until you do it, that's really when you get it, right? Something I just wanted to talk about in terms of physical safety. We do not do physical safety without emotional and mental health safety. I have been through behavioral threat assessment training, advanced behavioral threat assessment training. I'm part of the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals because I believe in that prevention part of it to identify individuals who are in crisis prior to it becoming a problem. And to your point, it is a culture thing. If we create a culture where people feel free that they can say things, right, that they know that they're supported, and how we get them from here for that adult life, right? This is all preparation for adult life, and that's how we look at it. To get them through that, to make sure that not only physically, but emotionally, mentally, they're safe as well.
Do we do anything with the nurse's office to coordinate with the nurse's office as well on the medical side? Because we have a number of phenomenal athletes, and there are some really risky things I've seen them do, and that's where injuries, and they're helping each other out. But if they don't know what they're doing, but any practice or coordination there that happens with the nurse's office
Yeah, great question.
in terms of training?
Yeah, there's definitely some education pieces that the nurses and now our health centers also going to be providing to athletics in different areas. So we're looking forward to that. We're definitely planned at least 2 sports for this year that the health center is going to be meeting with the coaches and the students and doing some training. Our nurses work very closely with the athletic trainers and athletics in terms of identifying proactive and help and
Just, I mean,
support.
simple that they, the hold in place gets, one person goes and stays with this person while then someone gets the trainer who's at the other side of the room. Just simple things like that, but.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful to hear.
Yeah, I will also say that with the cardiac response plan, with the requirement of within the first 30 days, people are trained in CPR. And I think we're going to train close to 80 people in CPR prior to that 30 days. So that's just another thing that we're doing. CPR, AED, first aid, and stop the bleed.
Thank you.
Okay, so final comment, I'm sorry. I know we can be here all night, but actually, Mr. Glowacki reminded me of this. We had a change in terms of use of cell phone. So talking about communications and expectation and reunification, are we working enough with our community outside of the school, our parents, to understand that if something happens, the text may not get an answer, not because something had happened, but just because the student doesn't have the cell phone with him or with her on hand?
I think there is one element of our school operations in which our parents and students are acutely aware, and that is that they do need to place their phone in a phone caddy when they enter an instructional area. So I think that's clear. One of the areas I think that we're still all navigating, and I think Mrs. Hughes and Dr. Georges would agree, is as we progress through drills, the question comes up, so let me understand this correctly. Do you remember? When a secure, when a lockdown, when a hold, when these different things happen, what happens with the devices that are in the caddy? And our current procedures are that it ultimately comes down to the adults in the room to make a decision. In many situations, the devices are returned to students. In some situations, especially in an evacuation, when you just need to get out, they may not be. So we've kind of navigated through that. But one of the big investments that we also worked on to make sure that everyone's in the loop, and we learned this at both of our schools in different emergencies, is making sure if students don't have a device in front of them, that we have a way to amplify and communicate large-scale messaging to them so they know what to do in different situations. And oftentimes that message or those messages mimic what's also being shared with parents. So we've had a few different approaches to make sure communication on all sides are improved.
Thank you. Well, thank you again. Thank you for the presentation. We're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is the District Policy Manual Modernization Project status update. Well, long title.
Thank you so much, Jen, Araceli, and Joel.
Thank you.
As we go to the next item, we talked about the importance. My friends from Civics, you are okay to go if you need. You are welcome to take your pictures as well. one of the commitments we made when we started the policy modernization project was to make sure that we are continuing to provide updates. And so as a regular standing item on our Board of Education agenda, we're going to be talking about this, even if there's not a lot of stuff that's happened so far. But last week, in the room right next door, Ms. Mullenbeck, Mr. O'Hara, and a variety of our cabinet members joined together to talk about policies. And we had a wonderful experience going through some questions, which Dr. Johns will just give a little background on.
Thank you, Dr. Gravel. The beauty of this subject or this topic is we can all let our heart rates go down a little bit. Doesn't cause as much anxiety as we work on a project that I think is really important. As you recall, the board approved the administration's recommendation on August 25th to participate in the IASB custom policy manual customization process. 2 days later, we held our first meeting. We met with two IASB representatives, Angela Powell and Nicholas Bauman. That's the assistant director and the director of the policy services for the IASB. This was an open meeting as expected from the IASB. The early big stages of this process will be held in open meetings. And we initiated the review. The review was pretty simple. We had pretty much all of the administrative cabinet in the room, along with the two board members, and they asked us questions related to the structure of the district, pertinent job titles, district-specific terms and policies that are unique to the district that we would probably want to sustain. And many of those will come back. We have approximately, I lost track, about 45 policies that are unique to District 225. And I would say 80% of those could be consolidated into existing IASB policies. So that's something that they're going to look into for us so that we can clean up some pieces of our policy manual. There was a great session, a lot of participation. The representatives from the IASB were grateful for everyone's participation and our readiness to have the policy conversation that we had. So the next step now is to wait. So for the next approximate 30 days, the ISBE team will look at the answers that we gave them to take their template and customize it according to our needs. We're expecting to hear back in, like I said, 30 days, at which time we'll hold another public meeting to hear the outcomes and the follow-up questions that the IASB has. We'll provide another update in coming meetings.
Thank you. I guess our next item is possible topics for future board meetings. You always can reach out to RJ and Sandy, but if anybody has any idea.
I would offer next meeting, if I recall correctly, we'll be focused on mental health supports for our students. So looking at safety from a different perspective. Dr. Cummings, is that correct? Our second safety presentation is next meeting? October 14th. Oh, forgive me, October 14th. I know we have another item scheduled for next week, but I'll follow up with that. I'm forgetting right now.
All right, and you mentioned earlier, actually, our next meeting is not 2 weeks from now, but 3 weeks from now.
That is correct. So just in recognition of one of our religious observances, we will not meet on the 4th Monday of the month. We'll proceed to the 5th Monday of the month. And then just another reminder, our meeting after that is around the Columbus Day holiday. And because the Columbus Day holiday is on a Monday, even though we're in session, the board meeting will be on the Tuesday after Columbus Day. So 2 meetings slightly off schedule.
All right. Okay. I know you all want to continue, but I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, everybody.
And we're talking about communications next meeting.
Yay.
It's a joke during
Oh, don't we have the community?
Bruce's last one.
Communications committee, that's right.